Thank you. As we're talking here today, there's a competing panel on infrastructure that I was also following as y'all were talking and seeing the chat that's going on. So we have the boon of multiple performances happening about this big infrastructure thing. So good morning. Thank you for everybody for coming through the rain and the wind and the tornadoes. Some of my pals out there, we're from California, so we deal with earthquakes, but what is this thing of wind? So thanks everybody for coming in. My talk is a little abbreviated. It's about a giant, massive thing as we are wont to do in digital humanities. And I only have a few slides and things to take you through because I want to really give us some time to give ideas about how we can do this infrastructure. So for those of you not familiar, with more than 30,000 California State University CSU faculty and librarians serving 477,000 CSU students across 23 campuses in California, finding collaborators who share an affinity for digital humanities projects and methods really has meant discovering each other outside our own limited campus networks. Many practitioners formulated their DH methods through what we call bloom and fade methods that didn't require digital skills of their students. Their bootstrapped IT equipment or server space, they used minimal computing without knowing it. They became itinerant entrepreneurs on behalf of DH and eschewed traditional DH scholarship in favor of DH pedagogy. What I want to talk about today is the same thing that Susan Brown lamented during her keynote, and also that I saw at the Centers and Institutes panel earlier this week, building and sustaining infrastructure. The backbone of DH that rarely, very rarely wins awards, and it's constantly underfunded. So we're going to have a happy talk, not cynical at all. Like the DH field in general, those doing digitally inflected teaching and research at the CSUs are not really able to find each other due to the disciplinary differences, but also because we just don't have a system-wide unifying DH theme. That is until some legislation was passed. California AB 1460 passed in 2020 that requires every CSU, UC, and community college student, undergraduate, is now required to pass an ethnic studies course. Not just take it, they have to pass it. With this new legislation, ethnic studies departments became funded and staffed to prep for the large number of students now required to take their courses. This allowed us to bring DH into the conversation around digital ethnic studies, DH scholarship, and DH specific to the CSUs, which is primarily first-generation students. Combined with the Digital Ethnic Futures Consortium's modest funding, specifically for non-R1 institutions, DH at CSU was born from a 2023-24 DEF CON capacity building grant with ongoing funding thanks to a second DEF CON grant. And for that first year, we were also extra funded with the Digital Ethnic Futures Lab at Dartmouth, thanks to Dr. Rupika Reeson, who also committed supporting funds. So in 2023-2024, we have accomplished a lot with $15,000. Those of you who do administration know that that gets stretched a lot in humanities. Meanwhile, my pals that who are getting NSF and NIH grants, they're like, we got a small grant. It's only $1 million. Okay. The California State University system is the nation's largest four-year public university system with 23 campuses and 7 off-campus centers. The combined campuses educate the most ethnically, economically, and academically diverse student body in the nation, and with nearly 56,000 faculty and staff. So I'm really curious, how many of you have ever heard of the Cal State system before? Shazam! For the recording, most of them. Just to most of the room raise their hands. I'm also a graduate from the Graduate Center of CUNY and taught in that system, so they are comparable, but the Cal State systems are just massively, expansively larger and as underfunded as the CUNY system. Of the 23 campuses, 21 are designated as Hispanic serving institutions, and 14 are Asian American and Native American Pacific Islander serving institutions. With an $8 billion in state funds and tuition fees budget, the CSU draws its students from the top third of the state's high school graduates as California's primary undergraduate teaching institution. I see a lot of being written that conflates the CSUs and the UCs. in what's called the master plan in California. The UCs are technically the PhD granting, and they were really specifically supposed to be for the leadership and the thinking community and workforce, and the CSUs were supposed to educate the workforce that goes right into the first level. And then the community colleges are supposed to uplift people from whatever situations that they're in. That's not actually how it is nowadays. So we just ignored the legislators from early 20th century. A September 18, 2023 San Francisco Chronicle article confirmed that the CSUs were the most attended schools among Black and Hispanic college students and the most economically disadvantaged students in California in 2021. Yet when it comes to training non-STEM students to work with digital tools and technologies, only 4 CSUs currently have established digital humanities centers. San Diego State, CSUN, which is Northridge, San Jose State, where I'm from, and CSU Fullerton. Many CSU campuses lack the infrastructure required to support research-intensive digital research projects. And on top of this, a study by Dr. Rupika Reesam found that only 22% of regional public universities nationwide offer digital humanities training to students. And by integrating ethnic studies fields with digital tools and methodologies, DH at CSU's goal is to create more dynamic and inclusive learning experiences that benefit students and communities across the system. So we want a DH that is really specifically defined for our student and faculty population. So we did a little bit of that work in the last couple of years. The consortium capacity building efforts offer a model for regional public institutions to understand how to create a network of interest, specifically by embracing the core values of ethnic studies paired with digital humanities. But the CSU system is complex, unique on a national scale, and individual on every single campus. The consortium's foundation rests on this idea that we're really stronger together. Now, when we came up with Stronger Together, we didn't realize it was also a political campaign. So it's not politics there. That's just what we came up with. The CSU Chancellor's Office, as many of you might already know, is the central governance of the CSU. It does not offer a method for faculty, staff, and librarians to communicate with each other across the entire system. The original team who initially began conversations about this type of consortium in 2020 relied on outreach among their campuses, serendipitous meetings across individual campuses, as well as the annual system-wide discipline-based council meetings. And really, to be honest, this all began because we were random DHers who found each other on Twitter when it was Twitter, when it was the good place. With the infusion of the DEF CON funds, support from Reeson's Digital Ethnic Futures Lab at Dartmouth, and the heavy lifting by Dr. Jamila Pugh at CSU Fullerton, and she's also one of the co-PIs of the National DEF CON Initiative, as well as key members of the 40-person advisory board steering committee, DH at CSU was able to accomplish a lot in 1 year with representation from 18 of the 23 campuses. And we have one of our advisory board members here in the room with us as well. Early on, we faced the issue of how to communicate with each other and then how to store the massive amount of materials we were continuously creating. And using the itinerant entrepreneurial ethos that Rebecca Frost Davis and I discuss in the What We Teach When We Teach DH article that just came out on Manifold, and bootstrapping or minimal computing, we used what was already available. This is what we do in the CSUs. The consortium established communications through SJSU's enterprise Google services with a Google group managed by me and a few other of the advisory board members, as well as a shared infrastructure for consortium documents in a shared Google Drive that was also coming from SJSU. And Dr. Pam Locke and Dr. Scott Kleinman were also included as managers to allow for redundancy and access, just in case I get hit by a bus if I'm out riding a bicycle. You can laugh at that. I do ride bikes and there are cars everywhere. Consortium members were added as they came on board. We held monthly meetings with a growing agenda. SJSU Humanities and Arts Marketing, staffed by graphic design majors, created our DH at CSU logo and then created colorways for every CSU campus. Stored in the Google Drive, all members were invited to use these logos as they see fit, and access to materials were rapidly accumulated. So what you see as the watermark in the back was created by our own SJSU graphic design students. That is the CSU way. We bring students in as collaborators. That's, I think, what's makes us different in terms of doing age. We drafted a press release and distributed it via the communications offices on every campus, as well as our chancellor's office, with the important highlighted information that the DEF CON funding came from it's a Mellon Foundation supported initiative. And here's the important part. Knowing how to get the attention of our administrators is incredibly important in the CSUs, especially with the cacophony of requests and emails. So many administrators picked up that it was part of a Mellon Foundation funded initiative where we got a read. And then they started making requests and paying attention to us. It is a little bit of politics and games, but knowing that insight and that we communicated that to each other, we were able to be much more powerful and stronger together. Our next step, we convened during summer 2023, meant inviting all 40 of the advisory board members and then anyone else who would like to attend. We're enthusiastically welcomed by the CSU Fullerton in the Los Angeles area, by their CIO, library dean, and their provost, who showed up to talk to all of us individually. A greeting that not all of us would enjoy on our campuses, so we're really grateful for Dr. Pugh for organizing such a welcoming. Bringing together those interested in DH and ethnic studies as both an exploration and a community building effort meant creating space for all the divergent perspectives in a productive manner. And that can often be chaotic and challenging. On day one, we implemented the Humanities HSS value cards exercises to facilitate building values-based infrastructure with both in-person and remote attendees. In-person attendees were assigned to specific tables with 4 to 5 participants from diverse backgrounds and campuses in order to facilitate icebreakers. Originally, people were just going to tables to sit with others from their own campuses or their own disciplines. So we initially ended up with the DHers over here and the ethnic studies faculty over here, with some going back and forth. But we forced them to break up, Jamila and I, and we asked them to really talk to each other across campuses and to mix with each other. And while they were hesitant at first, they really got into it. We asked the teams to affix values cards to the whiteboards, and there were 5 of them altogether, plus 1 online. We encouraged them to get messy by drawing connections in non-hierarchical fashion. And this is really where the magic happened. At first, everybody just put their cards up on the board and they said, "We're done." So Jamila and I then went around to every table and said, how are they connected? What's going on here? And then that inspired another conversation, trying to figure it out. It was a little like running a class, but with faculty and librarians and staff who are incredibly smart and dedicated to their areas. So it was a little intimidating. At the same time, we were like, get to work, do the work. And they did it. So the open discussion yielded crossover without necessarily seeing consensus. We were not going for consensus in the values that would provide the foundation for the consortium. Some of the things that come up, and the one that's really nice and neat is from the online group. And then the other ones were the hand-drawn things, and there's 2 more, the hand-drawn, but it was a lot to put up there. And we asked them to then articulate their methods they were putting together. And the thing about using these, doing the values workshop with Humanities HSS, you can actually get those values cards from their online area, print them out, and then distribute them. If you're having a hard time with a committee meeting or restructuring curriculum, I strongly urge you to go to Humanities HSS and see how you can use their cards for some magic. So some of the things you see: flexibility, community, different definitions of public good, intentionality, intersectionality, inclusivity, trust and respect, generosity, and advancing knowledge. And we also had from all of them empowerment. And that was really specific to the CSU, understanding that people want to better themselves, their communities, and their life chances. Our mission statement grew out of that meeting. We found in our discussion that the tensions identified were as important as the shared themes. We struggled to settle on the governance infrastructure, though, especially after community organizers and ethnic studies faculty pointed out that typical governance structures for a university are not necessarily inviting to those very community organizations and faculty that the consortium proposes to embrace and serve. We also discussed why our ethnic studies faculty might be reticent to join an initiative that makes yet another request on their overburdened time, especially at a moment when CSU campuses are pressing these same faculty for creating curriculum, educating every student who walks the campus gates, and helping each campus with its own DEI work. And I have to say that every ethnic studies department, and there are multiple on each campus, they were programs before primarily. They were not departments. So they had to do mass hiring. So that means ethnic studies faculty are either lecturers or adjuncts, or they are junior faculty. They are not senior faculty, and that puts them at a disadvantage. So we had to take that into consideration as we were talking to people and asking them to give us their time or generously donate their time. As a calling card, our members also created a website on H Commons, which Kathleen Fitzpatrick is talking about in the other session right now, as Knowledge Commons, as a way to signal that no single campus owns DH at CSU. We've run into some sustainability issues that we're working to resolve, and we may in the end have to move it off of H Commons. But that's another thing that we just had to do minimal computing. What do we need? What's free? Do we have sustainable budgets for the next 5 years? Can we pay for the hosting of the site so that we don't lose any of the layouts, the blog posts that we've got here in case WordPress breaks? It already has. So, and our website team is really incredible. We have grand plans for this consortium and received a second round of modest funding from IFCON for this coming year. However, as is the way with the CSU, we were relying on an incredible statewide program called Learning Aligned Employment Program, or LAPE. The dyslexic in me hates that. LAEP. LAPE. Yeah. To hire a team of 6 students to develop and help us implement a communication strategy for this phase of creating CSU Expert Series. With this program, each student could earn up to $3,000 every semester with no limit on the number of students we could hire for each semester. So that was an additional 18,000 in resources we were looking to use to amplify the work that we were doing this coming year. The $1 million+ for this program had been already deposited in SJSU's coffers for over a year. Faculty had begun using the program. However, with California's budget shortfall, the governor killed it and took back the money. It had already been distributed to every CSU community college in UC. That was a real bummer. Our premise for the second year of funding is that we have a massive brain trust in the CSU system among all of our librarians, faculty, and staff, including our CIOs. But we often invite outside speakers because it's easier to identify them than it is to invite and pay our own CSU experts. So we propose to build regional networks and host public programming based on the needs identified by each region. We're on the way to building a voluntary database of experts, but again, we're saddled with serendipity and outreach via individual campuses. We also have a dream of building on the workshops that Dr. Locke and SGSU Associate Library Dean Christina Mounier ran as part of their 2021-22 Digital Humanities Research Institute Fellowship, which was a successful collaboration between SJSU and San Diego State. And that DHRI Institute was fostered and awarded by Digital Initiative Program at the Graduate Center CUNY, which I think they're also talking about in the other section on infrastructure. We also have a great capacity to host informal and last minute programming, such as the May 2024 last minute gathering about creating DH or DH inflected centers on individual campuses. As soon as we got funding at San Jose State to create a DH center, we heard from the digital humanities community, centers are dead. How many of y'all have some sort of digital humanities or digitally inflected center or institute on your campus? Just a few. They're very expensive. The meeting that we put together came about because 4 people emailed separately about their interest in a center or institute and wanted to know the CSU specific hurdles. Pam Locke, Christine Mounier, Scott Kleinman, and Jamila Pugh also spoke openly and transparently about how to navigate not only the intellectual development of a campus-specific center or institute, but also how to navigate the labyrinthine administrative requirements to establish and fund them. It's about talking to your dean and how do you pose that? And how do you relate it back to the campus strategic plan? During this first year, we also held informal conversations across campuses to help those faculty who without a robust office of sponsored research or grants. We help them to author grants, facilitate quick routing, create ethical budgets, and host meetings between campus teams to impress upon them the importance of supporting their faculty and going for grants. With the overwhelming push towards AI, both the ethical dimensions that Silicon Valley ignores, as well as the EdTech push, it's really important that faculty and librarians at the CSUs are talking to each other across campuses right now, immediately. That is exactly why we are continuing this work together. We are definitely stronger together. It sounds like we've come far, and we have. But now we're struggling with governance construction to avoid overloading a small number of people. And we have perennial issues with lack of funding. We're used to being itinerant entrepreneurs in the CSUs, but it would be really terrific if we didn't have to be. Thank you. I look forward to the conversation.